It is late at night. A person stands in front of an open fridge, lit by that pale white light. They are not hungry. They ate a full dinner just 2 hours ago. And yet here they are, scanning the shelves, reaching for something. This video is about that moment. It is about why a well-fed human, with no real need for food, still feels pulled toward it, again and again, in a world that never runs out. So let's start with a simple, uncomfortable idea. Hunger is not one thing. There is the hunger of a body that truly needs fuel. And there is a second kind, a hunger that switches on simply because food is near, and looks good, and would feel nice. Scientists call that second kind hedonic hunger. It is not about survival, it is about reward. And in a modern kitchen, it is running almost all the time. But how strong is that second hunger, really? In 2016, two researchers named Rebecca Boswell and Hetty Kober gathered together 45 separate studies, covering more than 3,000 people. They looked at what happens when a person is shown food cues, a photo of a burger, the smell of something baking, the sight of a snack on a counter, and they found that how strongly a person reacted to those cues actually predicted how much they later ate and how much weight they gained. The craving was not just noise. It was a signal that led to real eating, which means the food does not have to be in your body to control your behavior. It only has to be in your sight. And that changes how we should think about the fridge at midnight. The problem may not be a weak will. The problem may be a room full of triggers, and whoever controls those triggers controls what you eat. In 2018, a researcher named Katrine Ejlerskov studied what happened when British supermarkets moved unhealthy snacks away from the checkout line. That one change, just placing sweets and chips somewhere less visible, dropped the sales of those items by around 17% almost immediately. Nobody was hungrier or less hungry. The only thing that changed was what sat in the shopper's path. Your appetite, it turns out, can be quietly steered by a shelf. So how much does simply having food nearby change how much we eat? In 1999, a researcher named Barbara Rolls ran a careful experiment. She gave people the exact same meal, but in different portion sizes on different days. The bigger the portion, the more they ate. Not because they were hungrier. They rated their hunger the same. They simply ate what was in front of them. When the plate held more, they took in about a third more energy without ever noticing. And it goes deeper than portion size. Rolls also tested something called energy density, which is how many calories are packed into each bite. When food was quietly made more calorie-dense, people ate the same weight of food and felt just as full, but took in far more energy without realizing it. Their stomachs were satisfied. Their bodies were flooded. The two signals had come apart. But there is another trick hidden in every large meal. In 1981, Rolls tested what happens when a meal offers variety. She gave some people a sandwich with one filling, and others a sandwich with 4 different fillings. The people with more variety ate about a third more. In a later 4-course meal, the effect was even bigger. This is why there always seems to be room for dessert. When you are full of one taste, a brand new taste can switch your appetite right back on. So availability, size, and variety all push us to eat more than we need. But modern food does something our ancestors never faced. In 2019, a scientist named Kevin Hall ran one of the most important food studies ever done. He brought 20 adults into a lab and controlled everything they ate for a month. For 2 weeks, they ate ultra-processed food, and for 2 other weeks, simple whole food instead. The meals were matched for calories, sugar, fat, and fiber. People could eat as much or as little as they wanted, and the result was stark. On the ultra-processed diet, people ate about 500 extra calories every single day. Same offered calories, same nutrients on paper. But on the engineered food, they kept eating well past the point where the whole food would have stopped them, and they gained weight. The unprocessed food did the opposite. The people had not changed. Only the food had. It had been built to be eaten in excess. Which brings us to why that food is so hard to resist. In 2018, a researcher named Dana Small studied what the brain does with fat and sugar together. She found that foods combining both fat and carbohydrate lit up the brain's reward system more strongly than foods that were just fat or just sugar, even when people liked them equally. And here is the strange part. That exact combination, fat and carbohydrate stacked together, barely exists in nature. It is almost entirely something we manufactured. And we manufactured a lot of it. When another researcher named Tara Fazzino measured the American food supply, she found that around 62% of the foods on offer were what she called hyperpalatable, engineered to combine fat, sugar, and salt in ways that push our reward system harder than nature ever could. So the modern world is full of a reward our biology never had to defend against. But before we blame ourselves too much, we should look at how our ancestors actually ate. In 2012, a scientist named Herman Poncer traveled to Tanzania to study the Hadza, one of the last hunter-gatherer peoples. He measured how much energy their bodies burned in a day, and the findings surprised everyone. Despite walking many miles to find food, the Hadza burned about the same total energy as an office worker in a city, which means our modern weight problem is not simply that we stopped moving. Their food was different. It was full of fiber, hard-won, and rarely concentrated into pure reward. A Hadza forager might return from a hunt with nothing at all. Their eating was driven by opportunity, not by an endless shelf that refills itself every week. But here is where the story turns, and where it gets almost cruel. Because when a modern person notices the weight and decides to fight back with a diet, their own body fights against them. In 2011, a researcher named Priya Sumithran followed people who had lost weight on a strict diet. She measured their hunger hormones, not just right after, but a full year later. And a year on, their bodies were still acting as if they were starving. The hormones that drive hunger stayed high. The signal to eat would not switch off, which means the body treats weight loss like a famine and mounts a defense that can last for years. It slows down. It turns up hunger. It quietly pushes the lost weight back on. This is not a personal failure. It is an ancient survival system, built for a world where losing weight meant losing your life, now firing inside a world where food never disappears. And we have seen just how far that system can go. In 1944, at the University of Minnesota, a scientist named Ansel Keys ran a now famous study. He took 36 healthy young men and, for 6 months, cut their food roughly in half. What happened was not only physical. The men became utterly obsessed with food. They dreamed about it. They collected recipes. They talked of almost nothing else. Their entire minds narrowed down to a single subject. Hunger, given enough time, does not just tug at the body. It takes over the mind. So the story comes together like this. We carry a brain that treats available food as an opportunity too good to pass up, because for almost all of history it was. We built a world that offers that opportunity every hour, in a concentrated form nature never made. And when we try to pull back, our biology mistakes it for famine and pushes us the other way. So the next time you find yourself in front of an open fridge, not hungry but reaching anyway, it might help to remember what that pull actually is. It is not weakness. It is a very old survival program, running perfectly, in a world it was never designed for. The hunger is real. It just is not asking what you think it is asking.